That's right, guys. That is molten copper. Doesn't it just look so awesome? That beautiful color that it gives off. Well, let me get into what I'm doing and how it started. So my friend asked me to make a copper branding iron for him. So because I do lost foam casting, I decided to try the lost foam casting method doing copper, which I've done before. And you can see this logo is actually backwards because it's going to be a stamp. So in preparation for the lost foam casting process, you carve out a piece of foam, you spray it down with some soapy water, and when that's all coated, you put some drywall mud over top of it, or gypsum. When finished casting this into solid copper, it will have a nice finish to it. The plaster or gypsum will fill in all the little spaces in between the lettering, and it will give a smooth surface finish to the top of it. I like to move the plaster around using a little sprayer like I have here to get inside all of the little tiny spots in the pattern. I then decided to buff out the back of it by cutting out another piece that I will then glue to the back. I didn't think this piece, the way it was thick enough to drill and tap it. So I used a square to draw a circle around it. You can see how I did the circle here. And I did mess up a couple times. But you can see it works very well for creating a circle on the inside of another circle. This helps you out for when placing this piece to know you got this in the very center of the back. So it is now a day or two later, everything is dry, and I also glued a little piece to the top, and that is where the molten copper will flow down into the pattern, or should I say foam, and it will actually burn away the foam and take its shape. So we are now out in the garage, and I have to melt some copper. I'm going to be using my little tiny crucible I have here and some copper ingots that I recently made by melting down some copper wire. These are thick, so it will take a little bit longer than it does take using copper wire. So once I put the crucible in the furnace, I'm going to ignite the furnace and let this cook for about 15 minutes. And while I have this thing cooking up, I'm going to go inside the garage and make up this lost foam casting mold. So for this cast, I'm just going to use an old coffee container and fill it up with dry sand. That's right, guys. It has to be completely dry. Not like dry you bought it from the store dry. I mean bought from the store dry and dried, like lay it on cement to pull out any moisture from the sand. All you have to do is put the foam pattern in the container and fill it up all the way to the top with sand. And I like to vibrate it slightly as I fill it with sand. And I should be using some sort of vibrating mechanism, but I don't currently have one, so I'm just using my hands and I'm just shaking the container a bit. It seems to be working. So just continue filling it all the way to the top. And then once you get to the top, clear away any sand around the foam, and then place a can with a hole cut out of the bottom over top of the foam. This is going to be the area that you're pouring the molten copper into. The can will keep the copper contained. Continue filling sand around that little can, and that will hold the can in place. Now that it's cooled off and dry because I set it aside for a couple hours, it's now time to clean it up with a wire reel to see how it came out. Well, I think it cleaned up pretty good, but there's a little bit of a problem. But we'll get to that in a little bit. The next thing is I'm going to cut off that sprue that's on the top of it. That's right, it's not going to work as a branding iron. The top of this is domed, and I think that's because I had improper compaction on the sand. And you know what that means? I'm actually going to make two more. I'm going to cast them in aluminum and use the aluminum pattern to make a copper one using green sand.